In a move that took the entire nation by surprise and left many struggling to comprehend its full weight, Buckingham Palace issued a formal announcement that has shaken the very foundations of the monarchy. What royal watchers had long feared, the unimaginable, the unthinkable, has now become undeniable reality. Prince Louis, the youngest and once so cherished member of the royal family, has been officially removed from the royal line of succession. This is a decision so monumental, so unfathomable that for many it is still impossible to fully grasp. What was once a distant and improbable fear now stands before us as stark, undeniable truth. And yet beneath the cold, clinical language of this announcement, there is something far more intricate, something human, personal, and deeply painful. There lies a hidden narrative, a tangle of secrets, silent suffering, and decisions so profoundly difficult that they have the potential to fracture not just a family, but an entire institution that has weathered centuries of scrutiny. This moment is about far more than just royal protocol or the formalities that have governed the British monarchy for centuries. This is not simply an exercise in following the established rules of succession. No, this is about something much deeper, something far more visceral. It is about the emotional toll, the unspoken turmoil, and the unbearable weight of a decision that cuts to the very heart of what it means to be a member of this powerful, iconic family. It's personal, it's painful, and it is, without a doubt, deeply political. The ripples of this choice stretch beyond the confines of the royal walls and will undoubtedly shape the monarchy's future in ways that no one can yet predict. As we begin to peel back the layers of this shocking announcement, we must ask, what does this really mean for the royal family? And more importantly, what does it reveal about the often unseen price of power, legacy, and sacrifice? Before we go any further in exploring the implications of this fateful decision, it is crucial to understand the gravity of what has just transpired. So make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for updates, because what unfolds from here is a story no one could have predicted. The path ahead is filled with questions, turmoil, and the potential for even deeper revelations, many of which we have yet to uncover. The announcement in its execution was abrupt, almost surgical in nature. There was no warning, no lead-up, no gradual unveiling of the news. It arrived suddenly, with no warmth to soften its blow, no words of comfort or understanding to ease the shock. It was at its core a cold confirmation. And with that stark, simple statement, the very air seemed to thicken, as if the entire nation was holding its breath. It was as though the ground itself trembled beneath the weight of the words. Within mere moments, the headlines exploded across every news outlet, each one more shocked than the last. Broadcasters scrambled in a panic, interrupting their regular programming to report the shocking news. Social media erupted into a frenzy, with reactions ranging from disbelief and outrage to sorrow and mourning. The digital storm became a mirror of the nation's collective shock as people tried in vain to come to terms with the magnitude of what had just been revealed. A child's name, a name so familiar, so beloved to the public, was suddenly associated with words no one could have anticipated. What unsettled the public the most wasn't just the magnitude of the decision itself, it was the silence that followed it. The silence was louder than any words. For so many, the absence of any immediate response spoke volumes. Prince William and Catherine, who have long been seen as the steady hands capable of soothing public emotion in times of uncertainty, said nothing. They offered no public statement. There was no immediate appearance to reassure the nation or address the gravity of the situation. There was no carefully worded follow-up from the palace, no attempt to explain, to comfort, to soften the blow. There was only an empty, overwhelming silence, a silence so complete that it resonated in every corner of the country, and it was deafening. It felt deliberate. It felt like a message in itself, a message not just from the monarchy but from the very heart of the institution itself. In their absence, a dark sense of foreboding swept across the nation. Silence left people wondering, what is truly going on behind the closed, guarded doors of Buckingham Palace? What was being hidden? What were they not telling us? And the absence of response, rather than quelling the storm, only stoked the flames of speculation and unease. It fueled a growing sense that something far darker, far more serious was unfolding behind the palace walls, and the world was left to wonder just how deep this mystery ran. This was not a simple or ordinary royal event. The palace had long been known for its careful control of public perception, its ability to manage its image with an almost surgical precision. And yet, in this moment, it became clear that something had gone terribly wrong. The coldness of the announcement and the silence that followed left the public questioning everything. In the past, whenever the monarchy had faced scandal or uncertainty, there had always been a clear, if sometimes reluctant, attempt to steady the public's emotions, to provide reassurance, to offer some form of transparency. But this time there was nothing, just an absence so profound, so complete, that it raised even more questions about what was happening behind the scenes. The nation was left grappling with the implications of this decision, unsure of what it meant for the future of the monarchy, unsure of how to process the absence of a child from the royal succession, a child who had once been destined to one day take his place in the line of royal heirs. The public reaction was raw and emotional. Supporters of the monarchy found themselves heartbroken, not angry. They mourn not just the loss of a title for the young prince, but the loss of innocence, the loss of a future that had once seemed so certain, so inevitable. The question echoing through royal circles and across the nation remained the same. What could possibly justify removing a child from a future he never asked for? Whispers began to circulate almost immediately, hinting at the deeper layers of this decision. Some suggested that there was a medical reality the public had never been told. Others pointed to a hidden scandal, something too damaging to confront openly. Each rumor, each piece of speculation carried with it a sense of dread, because none of them pointed towards something simple or benign. Instead, they hinted at something far more complex, far more tragic, something that could change everything for the royal family. It became clear that this was no routine adjustment, no minor shift in the order of succession. No, this decision was driven by something far darker, by fear, pressure, and secrets that had been allowed to fester in the dark corners of the palace for far too long. Royal aides, when pressed for clarity, offered nothing more than vague references to long-standing constitutional protocols. Yet these responses did little to quell the growing unease. After all, the very nature of the monarchy has always been defined by its flexibility, its ability to adapt to the needs of the moment when required. So why now? Why this child? Why such a final, irrevocable decision wrapped in such cold, impersonal language? These questions hung in the air unanswered as even the most seasoned constitutional experts, those who have spent their lives studying the monarchy's inner workings, were left in stunned silence. None could explain how a decision of such magnitude could be made so quietly, so swiftly, and with so little transparency. It was as though the palace had chosen to lock away the truth and leave everyone on the outside to guess at its meaning. As the shock began to settle, emotions ran high across the country. Supporters of the monarchy, who had long stood by the family, expressed profound heartbreak, not outrage. Many whispered the same question in hushed tones. What could possibly justify removing a young child from a future he never asked for, a future he could never have imagined? The speculation around the move only intensified with each passing moment. Commentators spoke of compassion, analysts discussed the need for image control, but somewhere deep within those two ideas, the truth seemed to be hiding, like a secret just beyond reach, a truth too painful to face. Almost immediately, the whispers. At first, they were quiet, almost imperceptible, but they grew louder, spreading like wildfire. Some hinted at a medical reality that had never been disclosed to the public, something too private, too intimate for anyone to comprehend. Others suggested a hidden scandal, some dark secret so potentially devastating that the palace dared not reveal it. Each rumor carried with it an air of dread. None of them pointed toward anything simple or benign. No, they hinted at something far more complex, something far more sinister, something that could change the very fabric of this royal family forever. Whatever the reason behind this decision, it was clear that this was not some routine adjustment of succession. This wasn't a decision made lightly. It was a decision born out of fear, of pressure, and of secrets that had been kept hidden for far too long, secrets that were now too potent to ignore. The palace perhaps had hoped that this announcement would silence the conversation, close the chapter, and put an end to the swirling speculation. But instead, it did the opposite. It cracked open the door to an even darker narrative, one that forces the public to confront difficult, uncomfortable questions about power, protection, and the true price that is paid by those. See, born into the shadow of the crown, the monarchy, in its attempt to control its own image, may have inadvertently unleashed a series of events that could change everything. As the nation continued to search for answers, something deeper, more poignant, and far more heartbreaking began to surface, something that no one had prepared for. It was a story that even the most loyal royal insiders had worked tirelessly to keep buried, hidden away in the palace's darkest corners. While the world continued to watch Catherine smile through her public duties, the reality behind the gilded walls of the palace was far more harrowing. Catherine was facing a crisis no mother should ever have to endure. Insiders have now revealed the haunting emotional toll that Catherine endured in private, one that would break even the most stoic of hearts. She was forced to come to terms with a painful truth, a truth so devastating that it could unravel her youngest son's future and forever alter the course of her family's place in history. As she struggled with this harsh reality, the weight of it began to take its toll on her in ways that no one could have imagined. Behind every public appearance, beneath every smile, Catherine was carrying the burden of a secret too heavy to bear, a burden she could not share with the world. And though she continued to play her part in the royal spotlight, behind closed doors, she was fighting a battle of her own. It was a battle that would forever change her, her family, and the monarchy itself. And as the story continues to unfold, one thing is certain: the emotional scars of this decision will be felt for generations to come. The journey ahead is filled with difficult questions, untold truths, and a reckoning that no one saw coming. Catherine's role in this will forever be seen through a different lens, one that reveals not just the strength of a mother, but the incredible emotional cost of being part of a family bound by duty, tradition, and expectation. For months before the public announcement sent shockwaves through the nation, whispers had already begun to swirl behind the closed doors of the palace. Leaks from senior aides suggest that Catherine, well before the world had any inkling, had become aware of troubling concerns regarding Prince Louis's future. It didn't start with grand announcements or open discussions. No, it began subtly, like a slow, ominous tide creeping in. Medical specialists were quietly brought into Kensington Palace. Advisors were seen coming and going at odd hours, and Catherine's once predictable schedule began to shift in ways that caught the attention of those closest to her. To the public, it looked like nothing more than a few missed engagements here and there, a slight shift in routine. But behind the facade of calm, these were the first signs of an internal reckoning of monumental proportions. In private, behind the elegant walls of Kensington Palace, Catherine was crumbling. The woman who had so often been the picture of poised composure, smiling gracefully through her royal duties, was now facing a truth that no mother should ever have to bear. One source close to her described her as haunted, a woman moving through the daily demands of royal life with a mechanical calm while privately spiraling in emotional turmoil. The struggle was visceral, palpable, and yet she kept it hidden, unwilling to show the cracks in her carefully crafted public image. Her maternal instincts, fierce and protective, were in violent conflict with the cold, unfeeling demands of royal tradition. She wasn't simply grieving the loss of a title for her son. She was grappling with the far more profound implications of what this decision meant for his entire future. And more poignantly, she was confronting the painful truth of what this exposed about the brutal machinery of the monarchy, a system that in the end had no place for the emotional complexity of a mother's love. Determined to shield her son from the public's prying eyes, Catherine went to extreme lengths to protect him from scrutiny. Any appearance involving Louis was meticulously examined, scrutinized down to the tiniest detail. Requests for interviews or any kind of public visibility were denied with increasing frequency, as Catherine worked tirelessly to keep her son out of the media spotlight. Staff were instructed to avoid even mentioning his name in the presence of visitors. It felt as though she was trying to freeze time, to keep the world from seeing what was happening, hoping that by delaying his exposure to the public eye, she could somehow delay the inevitable. It was as if, by holding back the tide of media attention, she could protect him from a fate she wasn't ready to accept. But as her isolation grew, so did the pressure. The walls of the palace, which had always felt like a place of refuge, now seemed to close in around her. Catherine reportedly began consulting a circle of trusted child development specialists, hoping against hope that they might find a way for Louis to retain his place within the royal family, while still being allowed the space he so desperately needed. But at every turn, she was met with resistance. The crown had made up its mind, and time was running out. Every decision, every consultation, seemed to be a futile attempt to change the course that had already been set in motion. Those closest to Catherine say that she begged for more time, weeks, maybe even months, to prepare herself and her family emotionally for what was to come. She wanted to ease her children into this harsh reality, to allow them to process the decision and understand its full weight. But the institution, an institution built on the cold calculus of tradition, duty, and control, doesn't wait for emotions. It waits only for obedience, for control. And in this race between compassion and constitutional image, the latter won. The monarchy's image was deemed more important than the emotional well-being of its own members. For Catherine, it was a heartbreaking loss, an irreparable fracture between the duties of a royal family member and the deep personal love of a mother. Her journey, filled with quiet despair, was now laid bare, a silent testament to the price that those within the monarchy must often pay. And as the world began to see the results of that decision, the emotional toll it took on Catherine would resonate far beyond the palace walls, leaving an indelible mark on a family and an institution that seemed for a moment to lose its humanity in the pursuit of power and control. For months before the public announcement sent shockwaves through the nation, whispers had already begun circulating inside the royal walls. Behind the curtains of Kensington Palace, the tension was palpable, and the air thick with unspoken fears. Leaks from senior aides suggested that Catherine, long before the rest of the world had any inkling, had become painfully aware of troubling concerns surrounding Prince Louis. These whispers didn't start with the grandiosity of a public scandal. No, they began subtly, almost imperceptibly, in quiet, hushed conversations. Medical specialists were seen entering Kensington Palace under the cover of night, advisors coming and going at odd hours, and a noticeable shift in Catherine's once reliable schedule. To the outside world, it seemed like nothing more than a few missed engagements, a fleeting moment of inconvenience in an otherwise busy royal life. But behind that mask of normalcy, this was the beginning of an internal reckoning of monumental proportions, the kind that no one could have anticipated. In the sanctuary of her private life, Catherine was crumbling. A woman who had always embodied grace, composure, and poise in the public eye now found herself haunted by an overwhelming sense of powerlessness. One insider close to her revealed that she was moving through her royal duties like a machine, performing tasks with an almost robotic precision, but emotionally spiraling behind the scenes. Her maternal instincts, fierce and unyielding, were in violent conflict with the cold, rigid demands of royal tradition. She wasn't simply grieving the loss of a title for her son, the title he was supposed to carry as part of the royal family. No, she was grappling with something far deeper. She was forced to reckon with the devastating truth of what this decision meant for Louis's entire future. She was wrestling with what it exposed about the brutal, unforgiving machinery of the monarchy itself, a system that valued duty and legacy over the emotional well-being of its own members. Catherine's devotion to protecting Louis knew no bounds. She took extraordinary measures to shield him from the unrelenting scrutiny of the media. Every appearance involving him was scrutinized down to the smallest detail. Requests for interviews or any public visibility were consistently denied with increasing frequency, as Catherine did everything in her power to keep him out of the public eye. The staff were instructed to avoid mentioning Louis's name even in the presence of visitors, creating a shadow around his very existence within the palace. It was as if Catherine was trying to freeze time to delay the inevitable, hoping that by keeping him hidden away from the cameras and prying eyes, she could somehow preserve his innocence, preserve his future. She wasn't just trying to protect him from the media, she was trying to protect him from a fate he didn't deserve. But as her isolation grew, so did the mounting pressure. The walls of the palace, once a place of solace, now seemed to close in on her. Catherine reportedly sought counsel from a circle of trusted child development specialists, hoping to find an alternative solution, anything that would allow Louis to remain in his rightful place within the royal family while also giving him the space he needed to grow and develop away from the intense spotlight. But with each passing day, it became increasingly clear that her efforts were futile. The crown had made up its mind, and the time for negotiation was running out. The institution was moving forward, unrelenting in its pursuit of control, and Catherine was left to watch as her worst fears came to fruition. Those closest to Catherine claimed that she begged for more time, weeks, perhaps even months, to prepare herself and her family for the emotional toll that was about to descend upon them. She wanted to give her children the opportunity to understand what was happening, to let them come to terms with it before the full weight of the situation was thrust upon them. But the institution, the very monarchy that Catherine had sworn to serve, doesn't wait for emotions. It waits only for compliance, for control. It operates with a cold precision that disregards the messy, complicated emotions of human beings. And in the race between compassion and maintaining the institution's image, the latter triumphed. As the weight of this decision continued to press down on Catherine, her demeanor became more and more strained. Her once bright, confident gaze was now clouded with exhaustion. Her smile, which had always been a symbol of grace, now seemed fleeting, fading too quickly before it could settle into a comforting expression. Her body language spoke volumes. Though she remained poised on the outside, the cracks in her composure were becoming harder to hide. Yet, despite either visible signs of distress, Catherine continued to remain silent. She couldn't allow herself to acknowledge the unthinkable truth. To do so would be to acknowledge that the institution she had devoted her life to had made a decision to quietly erase her son from the royal legacy, from the future he had been born into. A decision that he had never asked for, but one that would shape his life in ways no child should have to endure. But while Catherine was at the center of the storm, it was Prince William who found himself caught between the cold, unyielding demands of the crown and his unshakable devotion to his son. William, known for his calm and composed nature, had always been lauded for his ability to navigate the complex line between being a modern, emotionally available father and preparing to one day inherit the throne. He had struck a delicate balance, one that had earned him respect both in public and private. But now that line, so carefully walked for so long, snapped. Faced with an ultimatum from the crown and a devastating diagnosis that had remained hidden from the public, William was forced to make one of the most painful, heart-wrenching decisions of his life. The consequences of this decision, he knew, would ripple through the monarchy for years to come, perhaps even for generations. For years, William had been praised for his hands-on approach to fatherhood. He was emotionally available, fiercely protective of his children, and willing to show vulnerability in a world that demanded composure and control. But when the discussions surrounding Louis's future moved from concern to action, something inside William fractured. Sources within the palace reveal that the private meetings between William and senior courtiers quickly devolved into tense, emotionally charged confrontations. What began as a father voicing concern soon escalated into something much deeper. This was not simply a father expressing his worry for his son's well-being. This was a man who, despite his royal upbringing, was pleading with the very institution he was born to inherit. He was begging it to see Louis as more than just a title, more than just a role to be filled. William was asking for compassion, for understanding, a basic recognition of his son as a human being, not a pawn in a royal game. In one particularly heated meeting, an insider claims that William could no longer hold back his frustration. He stood up abruptly, his face flushed with emotion, and slammed his hand down on the polished oak table. His voice cracked with urgency as he shouted, "He's just a child, let him be." It was a rare outburst from a man known for his stoic composure. But by then, the decision had already been made, the wheels of the monarchy set in motion. The crown had decided that it would be easier to quietly remove Louis from the succession line rather than face the growing public speculation surrounding his condition, his abilities, and the potential impact his future might have on the royal family's carefully crafted image. The cold, hard logic of maintaining an untarnished legacy had triumphed over the messy realities of human life. For William, this was a devastating moment, one that marked the deepening fracture between his personal love for his son and the institution that had demanded his loyalty for so long. The man who had always walked the line between father and future king now stood on the edge of that line, the ground beneath him crumbling as he watched the institution he had devoted his life to betray the very family it was supposed to protect.